It was about website authority, good content existing, good SEO optimized content existing, and strong website performance, meaning your web page can't take 10 seconds to load. That was yesterday. Today, in addition to all of those things, it is the experience and the expertise, your authorship profile. It's kind of like, am I vetted? Am I qualified to talk about this? Am I actually bringing uniqueness to the table so that I'm adding value to the internet? So that's today. And tomorrow, it's going to be that on steroids, essentially.
Hi, and welcome back to SaaS Half Full, the only show serving B2B SaaS marketers. I'm Lindsay Groper, president at Blast Media, and as always, I will be both your host and bartender today. My conversation today is with Greg Brooks, who is partner and CMO at SearchTides, and we are diving into all things AI and SEO. We have not talked about this topic before. We certainly have tackled AI, but not as it relates to search. So Greg breaks down what era are we in right now as it relates to search. We are in the influence era, and believe it or not, ironically, he believes that we are going to be moving shortly into the human era of search. So if you care to, grab a drink and join me as I tackle all things AI and SEO with Greg. Hey, Greg, welcome to SaaS Half Full.
Hey, what's up, Lindsay? Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you. We are kicking off our weeks on a Monday. This is not my normal recording day, so also not my normal drinking day, but here we are. We find ourselves on a Monday. It is 2 p.m. where I am. So we're past the AM hour. It's reasonable.
We're in the PM.
Yeah. I'm drinking a Vizzy, which is a version of a hard seltzer. And are you joining me for a drink today?
I am. I have a nice gin-based drink here.
Love that. Before I hit record, you said your wife was giving you a look when you went down and mixed that on a Monday afternoon.
Well, I was trying to frantically find some limes, and I was like, where are these limes I put here? And she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I need this for a call.
She's like, do we need to have a talk later? Yeah, I get it.
And I was like, it depends on if I find the limes or not. But yeah, no, that's good.
Well, I am excited for this conversation because we have had no shortage of conversations on this show about AI. A lot of it was sort of theoretical. We went back to Veer versus Foe back a year or so ago, and now we've moved past that. But one thing we have not tackled specifically is how AI is affecting those of you who run or manage an agency of search and SEO. When you approached us with this topic, it was like, duh, this is really overdue. But before we dive into that topic, Greg, please do give our listeners a bit of background on you. You are a partner and CMO at SearchTides. So let us know, what is SearchTides and sort of what was your journey into owning and working all things digital marketing and SEO?
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for the handoff, Lindsay. So my name's Greg Brooks. I'm CMO and a partner at SearchTides. SearchTides is a hub for all things SEO, AI, and kind of like the future of how people search for information online. And my background is I've been in the marketing space for probably close to 15 years, been at SearchTides for probably close to 10 years. And I've done everything from full service campaigns, managing 8-figure budgets for completely in my control, to zooming in and really focusing in on search. I think one of the big things that we get to see at SearchTides is we see the field so much more broadly because our goal is to look as far out into the future as we can. So for example, we've been using AI tools and building our own internal models before ChatGPT existed to the public. So we're comfortable with this stuff. We have a pretty good idea of where it goes. And we still utilize that information to get very tactical with how we do things too. So I think we'll be able to speak about both of those today.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that. We have mostly SaaS marketers who listen to this podcast. Thank you so much. And my goal is I always want them to come away with one actionable thing that they can take and immediately put into their day-to-day, whether you're a CMO or whether you're a digital marketing manager. That one thing's going to be different for everyone, but I appreciate you. Yes, we can talk broadly, but also taking that down into a tactical level. Before we dive completely into that, can you give everybody your perspective on, even over the last 24 months, like what do you think have been the biggest milestones as it relates to AI, its impact on search, and also like the corresponding feelings that the search community had within those moments? Like sort of what were those when you think back, like, man, it was this moment in time and then this one that sort of fundamentally changed? Because there's been a lot over the last couple of years. What are those in your perspective?
Yeah, there have been a lot. The current trajectory started when Google came out with, I forget what it's called, like Mind Share or something like that. There's some AI component that became really important in its algorithm. And that was like a few years ago. Search is really interesting because you have typically these really massive algorithm updates happen multiple times a year. So the fact is, there's just always a lot of things in transition and always a lot of things that seem just orders of magnitude larger of changing than other industries. The last few algorithm updates have really been the same thing. They've been around this concept called content helpfulness. I think the underlying theme is that AI is now participating algorithmically in a way that it hasn't before. And also that every few years you get a glimpse of what the next 3 to 4 or 5 years are going to look like. And I think we recently got that with these past couple of algorithm updates. So at SearchTides, we think of SEO and search in three different layers. Number one is the foundational layer of SEO. So if you imagine a pyramid, you need all of them to be successful. That's everything that you know about SEO. It's link building, content creation, on-site optimization, technical SEO. And then where we are right now, we call it the influence era of search. And what that looks like is you're an authority when you're talking. You have something unique to add, your experience, your expertise, your general trustworthiness, the trustworthiness of your website. And ironically, where we think the future is going is called what we're calling the human era of search. It's ironic because there's going to be more AI generated content on the internet than there ever has been by orders of magnitude. And that'll be appropriate. If you want to look something up, you look today on Wikipedia, or maybe yesterday on Wikipedia, maybe today on ChatGPT, and maybe tomorrow on some other mechanism. But that's not what the human essence is about. We weren't made to create content when you had to cite all those sources in your research papers that you did, bibliography. Humans weren't made to become bibliographies. Like, we have a human experience that we should be writing from, that we should be speaking from, that we should be talking about. And that's really the core concept that I think is going to bring us into the future. And that's going to separate the brand. I'll dive in with very specific actionable advice today. No longer create content for the purpose of appearing high in Google. Create content because it's providing value to your customer or client along their customer journey, and do it in the medium that makes sense, which is sometimes written, sometimes it's video, sometimes it's a graphic, but it's all about genuinely providing value. To get super tactical, go look at all the content on your website. Probably a lot of it is fluff. And you can actually paste in a piece of content into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you remove the fluff from this article? And then you'll be left with something that is a quarter or a third of the length. At SearchTides, we have two metrics that we use. One of them is called value per word, and another is value per second in terms of video. That is the ethos that you should be creating from in today's era, and then especially in tomorrow's era.
Yeah. Being now the influence era, can you talk us through what you have to nail to effectively participate in this influence era?
Yeah. So the two biggest components are experience and expertise. And I can use an example for both of them. If I go into the pharmacy and I have a prescription for something and I go to the pharmacist, I say, hey, can you fill this prescription for me? And the pharmacist says, totally. Just to let you know, there's a generic version of this available. It's 10% of the cost. You should get that. That's the pharmacist using their expertise to know that that exists. If I go to the pharmacist and I say, hey, can you fill this for me? And the pharmacist says, I totally can. Just to let you know, every time I give this to someone, there's no positive effect. They come back, I give them this other thing. It works perfectly. You should just take that the first time. That's the pharmacist using their experience. And if you put yourself in the position of a pharmacist who's never been on the job before and is starting out day one, they couldn't tell you those things because they don't have expertise and experience. So wrap that into your content creation. If you can't bring something unique to the table, exactly why do you deserve to be the one recognized for that topic? And so that's what expertise is. That's what experience is. And writing with those fundamentals is a really important principle.
No, that's a really great analogy. I appreciate that. And I do find it ironic that the next generation is the human era, given our topic today. If you could simplify what SEO is today versus what it was 5 years ago in 3 to 5 words, how is it different today? It was this, and this, and it is now, this, and this. Because I feel like those answers, there's going to be maybe a couple similar words and some very different ones.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. It was about website authority, good content existing, good SEO optimized content existing, and strong website performance, meaning your web page can't take 10 seconds to load. That was yesterday. Today, all of those things. In addition to all of those things, it is the experience and the expertise, your authorship profile. It's kind of like, am I vetted? Am I qualified to talk about this? Am I actually bringing uniqueness to the table so that I'm adding value to the internet? So that's today. And tomorrow, it's going to be that on steroids, essentially. I'm an author. What do I write? Am I a medical doctor who just writes about this one topic of the internet? Is that what my Twitter profile is about? Is that what my 3 authorship profiles on these 3 websites that I write for is about? Or do I write about 7 different topics? One of them is rock climbing. One of them is what I do for my patients. Another one. So today is, are you a qualified authority? Tomorrow is, are you the qualified authority? And how do you make that happen? You get really specific about what it is that you know or that your company stands for that nobody else's does or the rest of your industry does. And that's what you lead for. The good news, Lindsay, is that this is like brand marketing 101. And so we're going back to the basics. Essentially what AI is going to do, and it does it for search, it does it for every other industry as well. It provides leverage at the individual level. So me as an individual, I can now do way more than I used to be able to do. So what are the implications of that? I'm saying nothing revolutionary here. Team sizes get smaller. Companies don't hire as much. Individuals who wouldn't be great managers, but they're great like individual contributors, all of a sudden they can do the things that they would have needed a team to have. So the barrier to create goes down. The barrier to own a business goes down. The barrier to run a department goes down in terms of people, which simply means that the same way that 30 years ago, there were 10 channels I could have watched of television. Now there's 10 trillion channels on YouTube. So I could get super, super specific with what I like. The internet will have more of that. And so I will want the business and the product and the company that resonates specifically with me more. Whereas previously, I won't have that choice.
I want to switch gears and talk about content creation a little bit more deeply. I remember I was on a call, it's probably close to 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, when ChatGPT thing launched, but where everyone went crazy about it. And it was a group of marketers, and there was all this discussion about, well, how am I going to know if what I'm reading was written by a human or by a bot? And my take was, I actually don't care if it's helpful and it's giving me the information that I need and it's accurate. I don't care. I don't care where it came from. I don't care how the sausage is made. It's just it tastes good. And there are different opinions on that. And also I'm like, and shame on you if what was written by a bot is more informative than what was written by a human. But what does Google care about? Do they care? How are they determining a level of influence? Is that sort of checks and balances or the citations? What does Google care about? Because it doesn't matter really what I care about necessarily, but what does Google care?
What Google cares about is people going to google.com and putting something into the search bar and getting the best possible experience and then coming back so that they can get lots of money on Google Ads. And so if you take that a step further, what Google cares about is providing the best experience for someone who's searching. Where in that is it written by an AI or human? It's not. It's not. So Google doesn't care. They've actually recently come out and said we don't care, but that's kind of how we've just proceeded this whole time. It doesn't make sense. And I think, especially in SaaS, like I know we're talking to a lot of SaaS marketers here. A lot of times we're just like, we're told that, hey, here's our 4 ICPs and here's their pain points and stuff like that. And in my experience, if you can zoom out more and you can go deeper, you can really get to the like core human desire that you're solving for. I'll give one example. I know of a veterinarian SaaS company, and they're basically like vertical SaaS for vets. And this is a whole space right now. And the pitches are, you make less mistakes, the medical records are accurate, all that stuff. What is actually happening at the core is that you have a group of people who's like basically putting down pets all day, every day, who got into the business because they love animals. And now they're killing animals consistently. And veterinarians have some of the highest suicide rates professionally out of all professions. So how do you approach that sort of a person? And the answer isn't, well, guess what? You'll be able to save money or time, or you'll make less mistakes with your billing records. And so if we just take that entire concept, like what's really happening with AI is the barrier to play is rising dramatically. The floor of what is going to be required to be successful is going to be higher than ever, because you have a bunch of good, skilled people who now can basically, they've just multiplied themselves. So instead of going up against one person who's really skilled, you've now gone up against one person, but they're now 5 people. And then you have that happening in an entire company. So the winners of tomorrow in the AI era understand the human components. Psychology matters, customer journey matters. They understand where someone's going to be, and they are viciously devoted to providing value no matter what, without asking anything in return, because there's so many companies, and it's bullshit and I hate it. And I'm glad, because I think it's on the way out. It's basically like the VC or the PE, the venture capital, private equity, like quantification of businesses where they're like, everything's a line item, show me channel-based ROI. And it's like, that's on the way out. And that's cool, because it's going to take those companies a very long time to understand that that's not how the world works anymore. And we have an opportunity, and the accelerant is actually like AI content, because there's going to be so much of this on the internet. How do you stand out? Through authenticity. And what does that mean? Actually providing value, actually being there to help someone, even if it is in a business capacity, and having that be your leading thing, not how do I like figure out a formula to extract money on the back end. Because as consumers have more and more choice, where do you think they're going to go to? They're going to go to the people who are obviously trying to extract money from them, or they're going to go to the people who are authentically trying to help them. And so the irony in all of this, Lindsay, is that these are all SEO principles that the SEO industry has just gotten the shit kicked out of them by Google over the last 5 years. If you don't create helpful content, you won't be seen. If you don't have good user experiences, you won't be seen. So all of these principles are starting to kind of like merge into the rest of the marketing and commerce world of tomorrow. And it's pretty clear where it's all going to go. The real winners are not necessarily the people who are going to be able to adopt AI, but they're the people who are going to understand the implications of AI coming into the marketplace and understand how that's going to change consumer choice, aka they're going to have a lot more of it, and then understanding how you be seen and heard and also provide value in that world. That's your core. And then you can get as tactical as you want inside of that framework. But if you just hanging out in the land of tactics, I think you're just going to get absolutely surprised. You're going to wake up one day and you're going to see a competitor that they get it and you haven't gotten it. And you're just like, oh, I'm an entire business cycle away from transforming this business into that. Or my company can't do that. The way that like capitalistic structures work is you have what's called excess profits. So that's digital marketing in the beginning, whatever. If it's like, oh, all this money and it's so easy to get, just make an advertisement on Facebook. Maybe we change an election. Maybe we don't. Who knows? Impossible to tell. But, make an ad, you'll get lots of ROI and money. And then a lot of people came into that. And then what happens is the industry gets bigger as a whole, but the money gets top heavy. And so in capitalistic structures, you have fewer winners who win more, and you have more companies who collectively have less to split up from. So the way to win tomorrow is to be the best, because there's fewer winners. And that's just the reality of it. And if you're not even approaching it from that perspective, I don't want to say you're fighting an unwinnable battle, but I can't imagine how much more difficult it will be.
And I could not agree more with you on VCs and PEs, looking at all these marketing tactics and expenses as line items. I heard a great analogy. It was on LinkedIn sometime last week of the desire, right? It's more of a CMO desire, but to look at it as a stock portfolio. Is it on the whole performing? Is it not? If it's performing, onward we move. If it's not performing, maybe we drill in a little bit and see it, those certain areas not performing again next month. But no board and no PE should be freaking asking about, we're a PR agency. What's our PR agency doing? How's our SEO strategy performing? Like, get out of here. Like it really needs to be looked at a top level. I could not agree more with that. Anytime we're asked to put together a board slide on PR, I'm like, this conversation, you're already fucked. This is not a good conversation for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's another really big skill in the future. I think it's the ability to educate and influence a board, because their background is dying. It is good to understand how to navigate a P&L and to do projections and all of that stuff, and to think about things at a departmental capacity, and to think about optimization strategies that you have, and think about broad ROI. And that's a core investment metric, cash on cash return. So if I'm investing into this business, what is the return I'm going to expect to get? All of that is fundamental to our structure. Great. I think one of the challenges is as soon as you try to influence any of that without understanding how it works, we talk about this internally at SearchTides all the time, where I'm just like, we do have an agency arm. And so we have agency clients, and there's like new people who come on and they might do something and they might write an email and they say one thing wrong in the email or not. And I'm like, yo, you cannot be doing that shit. And they're like, why? Who cares? We have great SEO results on this campaign. I was like, because when people don't know how to grade you on the thing that you're doing, they grade you upon the things that they know. And everyone knows how to grade grammar, and everyone knows how to grade quote unquote ROI. Is this number bigger than this number used to be? Is it smaller than this number? Bad. Smaller number, bad. Bigger number, good. And so you just have people who are, it's okay. It's going to take a while, but like, I can't wait for it. All the Ivy League schools and shit. I'm sorry if anybody went to Ivy League. I think it's great. And I also think that you learned a great discipline, but the methodology is the equivalent of existing in a theoretical world without real world experience. And that's typically I can't imagine a less precise definition of a board.
Yeah. Yeah. You had talked about writing for fluff and volume as being old practices and not recommended, and actually never recommended. But when it comes to AI, what do you find that digital marketers are getting wrong? And this could either be because it's a misconception, because they just don't know any better, or it's a belief. But what are you seeing sort of across the board that most digital marketers are getting wrong right now as it relates to AI?
That's a great question. I'll answer your question and then I'll give another answer too. The specific answer to your question is trying to get AI to do the work as opposed to getting AI to improve the work or to do the research. So I'll give you a specific example and then I'll go on to something else that that will be my next rant. So, hey, write this article about this, and this thing. Bad way of doing it. Good way of doing it. Hey, here's the top 5 performing articles for this keyword topic or for this topic online. Please dissect them and give me a list of all the subtopics that they talk about. Okay, cool. Now I have a collated list of all the things that were deemed important because they're all appearing high in the search results. And now I know the backbone of what it is that I need to have. Here's another way to do it. Upload the content helpfulness guidelines to ChatGPT. Hey, I'm trying to adhere to these guidelines. Now I make my article, I put into ChatGPT. Hey, can you just make sure that I'm adhering to these guidelines? Can you call out places where I'm out of the bounds of them, or call attention to where you think there's really good examples of it? So it's almost like the second set of eyes. That's a research assistant. That's a very effective way to use AI right now. I think getting AI to do the work for you is not there yet. I mean, maybe it'll be there at ChatGPT 10.0. I don't know, but it's not in 4. So that's where I think the big thing that folks are getting wrong. They're just trying to outsource their work, whereas what they really should be doing is utilizing these tools to make their end product better. So that's one thing. I'm like, hey, we didn't talk about SEO specifically. So I'm going to give a framework for how SaaS marketers can assess SEO, and then, we'll take it from there. So the number one thing that everyone gets wrong is that the most important thing is website authority, which typically is going to be domain authority on Moz or domain rating on Ahrefs. If you have everyone else in your industry is at fundamentally different tiers than you, because their scales from 0 to 100 and they're logarithmic, which means 10 to 20 is way easier than 20 to 30, which is way easier than going from 30 to 40. So if you're at a 30, and these are just link-based metrics, they come from the amount of quality links pointing back to you. If you're at a 30 and everybody else in your industry is at a 70, you're not going to be able to appear at the top of the search results for the same types of articles that they can. And so that's why at the beginning, my big suggestion was don't write for Google, write for people on the customer journey and understanding the exact purpose of where they are. And then if you're able to get search traffic from that, great. If you are already generating organic traffic, that's a good for non-branded keywords. So for terms that are not the name of your company or don't include the name of your company, then that's a good indicator that you're kind of in the mix. So if you want to create a content program, then you can kind of do the types of things that I just described about to kind of backhand, hey, how do I make sure I have the right subtopics? How do I make sure I have the right, I don't have fluff? You want to answer a query pretty much immediately. So your article should be the topic that you're addressing and then the core takeaway right away. And then think of the rest as context. Then you want to make sure that you have scrollability, or what we call the scrollability test. If you are taking a phone and scrolling through your article, can you kind of see what's going on? Or is it like headline, paragraph, headline, paragraph, headline, paragraph? And the reason is because, and we do this, but we were in denial that people do it for our content, but like we scroll or scan, we see something interesting, we stop, we read it. If it's interesting, we read more. If it's not, we scroll, we scan, and we repeat that process. So structure your articles in a way and your content in a way where that can be done to it. Because it's not about your entire thing being read. It's about that optionality, but allowing the person to decide whether to execute that option or not forcing it down there. You're not an author. They didn't buy your fucking book. You're there to be a resource and to provide value. So that's how I think about content. In terms of technical, the number one thing I would say on the website is, what does the experience look like on a phone? How easy is it to navigate on a phone? Like, stop pretending that everyone's sitting in an office on a laptop or a desktop and looking at shit, because you're not. So don't assume, or sorry, quote unquote, you totally are, but maybe not everyone else is. Who knows? It's impossible to say. But ultimately, so how does your website present in that capacity? And so what are the elements on the page that allow that to load quickly versus slow it down? And then I think on the technical side, my other quick win piece of advice would be, if you have a product team, pre-rendering, any type of rendering stuff doesn't work. It says that it works, it doesn't work. The page that Google wants and the best user experience page is HTML and CSS. Now, there's a million reasons why that doesn't make sense for us to actually build. But if you come from the perspective, that's what like the base case should be. Why do I need to add this? Why do I need to add this? Why do I need to add this? As opposed to the other thing around. And then I think in terms of on-site optimization, that matters less and less. The most recent algorithm update, we've never seen so many things leave the correlations. So we're part of groups that scrape like tens of millions of search results pages. And we've brought Google into 5,000 what are called ranking factors. The last algorithm update, we've never seen so many ranking factors leave effectively having a correlation to rankings that were optimization based. And they're being replaced with like helpfulness metrics.
Can you give an example of what's a helpful metric?
So one example for optimization stuff, like a literal example from the list, is favicon. So before, if you had a favicon, that was a ranking factor. Now, if you have one, that's not a ranking factor. Before, your like, not keyword density, but I think having like schema, not as important as it used to be. It's now table stakes. So that's the other thing too. Like, things are having less correlations because everyone has them. Things like on-site optimization, we've seen those raw changes not have as large of a result as they previously did. We've seen helpfulness changes where you're writing from experience, you're writing from expertise, you're putting the answer at the top of the page, the scrollability is better. Those things do have bigger changes. And then I think you wrap it all with content that is going to meet people on their customer journey and going to be value driven. And the best analogy I've ever gotten about how to think of your customer relationship, you're making a deposit into the bank account of your customer. And then every asset you have, you're making a withdrawal. What does everybody do? They're like, well, I'm going to sneak it. So in the past, they just ask for withdrawals. And now people think they're tricky. So they make like 2 test deposits. And then they're like, all right, here we go. Don't ever think about making withdrawals. Just think about making deposits. And then when it makes sense, then you're conscientious about making the withdrawal. And by the way, that doesn't mean it never makes sense. It just means be measured about when you do it. The end result is that you will have more loyalty, higher conversions, and therefore more money.
Love it. Well, Greg, this has been awesome. I'm shocked we have not covered this topic here in the last really even 18 months or so. Is there anything that we didn't tackle that you want to make sure that we cover today?
No, I think we had a lot of stuff. I think the future is really like writing from the heart more so than writing from the mind. I think the era that we're moving into as society is we've kind of just felt squeezed as individuals by this corporate structure. We're kind of like aware of a lot of stuff that we are aware as consumers to an extent that we've never been before. And this is what happens after you have social media for 15 years. You're just like aware of how all this stuff works. The amount of people that know their phone listens to them and serves them Instagram ads, right after they talk about something. Like, think about how crazy that would be to even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, say your phone was listening to you. And now if you literally want an ad about something, you can just say something into your phone while the lock screen is up and you will get it. So like the mask is off. The mask is off. And the only way out is through authenticity because people know the game and they don't want to play.
I love that. Well, as I end every episode, I always ask my guests if they have a favorite or signature toast to send us out.
Oh my goodness. All of my toasts have been riddled with long stories and quasi-embarrassing moments. So I think what I would just say is like, I'm toasting to the humans. I think there's never been more pessimism about the future of society other than the 50 years before that, and then the 50 years before that, and then the 50 years before that. But I'm toasting to humanity. I think that so much of what we perceive externally is actually neutral. I think technology is neutral. I think we make it out to be this thing because we see how certain people decide to use it, which is negatively, by the way. So it's not unjustified, but we are the ones in control and in power, and we have the ability to utilize these things in a positive capacity and through, word of the day, an authentic manner that is genuinely caring for others. And I think if we lead with that, then we will be in a very happy place.
To humanity. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me on, Lindsay. It was a pleasure.
Thanks again to Greg for joining me on SaaS Half Full. I enjoyed that conversation. That's probably one of the deepest toasts we've had to end the episode, talking about humanity, toasting to human beings. I love that. Hopefully you took away one actionable thing you can walk away with, apply to your job immediately. Really appreciate the listen. And until next time, bottoms up.